Hey guys, welcome back. This is the MMA Breakdown doing predictions for UFC Fight Night 79, Henderson versus Alves, taking place on November 28th in Seoul, South Korea. If you were to ask me my thoughts on this card, I would say awful. Henderson versus Alves is good, and Kim versus Masvidal. Other than that, absolute garbage. But let's get into this and follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. Live tweet during fights and stuff, so come and talk with me on there. Let's try to run through this. Starting off with the UFC Fight Pass prelim card at women's strawweight, Seoul Ham versus Courtney Casey. Both fighters coming off of their debut performances. Seoul Ham against Calderwood and Casey against also against Calderwood. And Casey obviously did a lot better. Ham, I think she was able to bloody up Calderwood, but was losing in the clinch. Just seemed to be at a physical disadvantage. Was eating some elbows and some dirty boxing shots from in the clinch, and just didn't seem to be a physical match, whereas Courtney Casey made it a brawl and was just exchanging blow for blow with Calderwood the whole way through. Lost the fight, but made it close. She was tough, and I think Casey just showed a lot more, so I have to go with Casey here. Is an aggressive striker, throws high volume, comes forward, and Ham just kind of fought at a much slower pace, didn't throw a whole lot, got out clinched. Going with Casey here. Next up at bantamweight, Guangyou versus Marco Beltran. Pretty much a striker versus grappler matchup, but a pretty low-level grappler and fighter overall in Beltran. Guangyou, I think, gets really underrated by fans because he is from tough China, and just the Chinese fighters in general. The fans just love to trash them, because they don't have really developed MMA culture there, or MMA background. But Guangyou, I think he's looked okay, really, in his two UFC fights. One tough China, or should have fought in the finale. I think he got injured and that fight was rebooked, but still against the other finalists from the show. Can't even remember the other guy's name right now. It doesn't matter, but I thought he won that fight, outboxed him, and then his last fight against Royston Wee just made Wee look like a little kid. Totally destroyed him on the feet, dropped him, knocked him out, and really threw with a lot of authority and tenacity. So I like Guangyou striking. I like him on the feet. Beltran from tough Latin America the first season, and doesn't really have a functional game. Has almost zero striking. Really, primarily a grappler. Won, I think, against Guido Canetti, I think it was, on the show, and I did think he won that fight. And then in the UFC, fought Marlon Vera, fellow castmate, in the finale, and everyone thought he lost that fight. I think I scored it for him. Got back control briefly, for a few moments here and there throughout the fight. But, other than that, I thought Vera was scoring with strikes and beating him. So I don't think Beltran has any chance of out-grappling Guangyou here. He just seems too dangerous on the feet. So going with Guangyou, I think he gets a finish. All right, next up at flyweight, Zhikui versus Freddie Serrano. Zhikui, this guy lost to Royston Wee in his debut, and then Roger Zapata, I think. Let me look this up real quick. I'm sorry, I looked all this up before I turned the camera on, but just shows that the Chinese fighters don't really resonate with me. Lost to Royston Wee and then got the win over Nolan Tickman last time out. Losing to Royston Wee automatically, that's just a big, red flag, a big what do you want to say? A big blemish on your resume. That's not good at all. Wee's pretty terrible. And then Nolan Tickman, and that was the fight. I think that's right. I think that's the fight that. Okay, I remember now. Yeah, Zhikui definitely should have won that fight. So got to take that back. Zhikui should have won that fight. That's the fight that we got totally robbed, and he was really beating up Wee. So I apologize for that. I thought he won that fight against Wee, definitely. And then won against Nolan Tickman last time out in a terrible fight. Very uneventful. Just basically landed a few more shots than Tickman. And, both guys probably threw a total of about 20 strikes, I'd say, in that fight. Pretty terrible. And then Freddie Serrano from Tough Latin America. He's actually an Olympic wrestler from Colombia, I believe, and showed some wrestling ability in the house. Didn't get the win against Juan Rivas, I think it was, and he got some takedowns. I thought he should have won the fight, didn't get it, and then in the UFC got a knockout over Bentley Seiler, another guy from Tough Latin America. I think it was an uppercut that he caught him with, but just put him out. It was a pretty uneventful fight before that. I think guys were saying, he's going to fight Mighty Mouse in the future, which I thought was hilarious. But anyways, got to go with Serrano here. He's got the wrestling background, showed power last time out. Zhikui looked very unimpressive in his last fight against Tickman. Both guys just circled around the cage pretty much the whole time. And then did look good against Wee. I remember that now, but I don't see really any reason to take Zhikui here. I have to take Serrano. Seems like he has a lot more potential. Next up, a middleweight, Dongyi Yang versus Jake Collier. Dongyi Yang, when I was looking this guy up, I thought he was a debuting fighter, and then I saw that he was in the UFC years ago, and I barely remember this guy's fights. I remember he fought Court McGee and was pretty much getting outstruck by McGee. It wasn't a very eventful fight, but McGee was definitely outpointing him, and then cracked McGee late in the fight, I remember, but McGee was able to recover and come back, and then also lost to Brad Tavares, I think, in a pretty one-sided fight. Jake Collier, he seems like a real low-level fighter, and I'd say this might be a toss-up, but just with the absence from the UFC, I think I have to go with Collier. Did not impress me against Vitor Miranda in his first fight. Got taken down, he was taking Miranda down, doing well on the ground, but then when they got stood up, just got nailed with a head kick and got put out. And then impressed me in his last fight against Ricardo Abreu. I thought Abreu was going to finish him in that fight, but he was able to strike with him and outpointed him on the feet for the win. I'm going to go with Collier just because Yang has been gone from the UFC for a while now. Other than that, I can't give much analysis. Both guys seem low level to me, but I'll go with Collier. All right, next up at lightweight, Tai Hyun Bang versus Leo Kuntz. Leo Kuntz coming off of his loss to Islam Makhachev, where they were exchanging on the feet. Makhachev seemed to have an advantage, but took him down and then took his back, subbed him out. Tai Hyun Bang, I don't think has been really too impressive either. Lost his last fight against John Tuck, got dropped, got his back taken and subbed out. But we did see power from him against Cajun Johnson. He has kind of a Katsunori Kikuno thing where he has that unorthodox stance and made it effective in that fight. I'm going to have to listen to someone else's analysis who's more familiar with these fighters, but both guys have fought in the UFC. You got to make a pick, so I'll just say Tai Hyun Bang. Kuntz didn't really make an impression on me. Neither guy really has, but Bang, at least we've seen him get a knockout over an okay fighter at the low level, so I'll go with Bang. Next up at featherweight, Yui Chul Nam versus Mike De La Torre. Yui Chul Nam, I'll be honest, with all the fights the UFC does in this day and age. Some of them slip through the cracks, and I really can't remember his fights too well against Tokudome, which he won, which is his first fight in the UFC, and his last fight against Nover. I think I remember Nover just kind of out wrestling him, kind of lazily, not much happening in that fight. And his opponent, Mike De La Torre, it doesn't matter that I remember Nam's fights, which also means that he wasn't good enough to make an impression on me. But Mike De La Torre, I think, seems like a solid fighter. Got knocked out last time by what's this guy's name? I always forget it. Maximo Blanco. Got knocked out last time, and he does seem like a bit of a wild brawler. Doesn't seem to have too many technical tools on the feet, but he has power himself. Knocked out Thiago Trator. Did get submitted by Brian Ortega on the feet. Got his back taken standing right at the beginning of that fight, and it was right at the beginning of his last fight against Blanco that he got knocked out. But I think De La Torre just seems like a higher level fighter than Nam. I expect him to have more power, catch him and hurt him, one with the striking. On the ground, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I like De La Torre on the feet, so going with De La Torre. All right, next up it's featherweight Doo-Ho Choi versus Sam Sicilia. This to me, any Sam Sicilia fight, I don't get really excited for, because I've just been waiting for so long since Tough for this guy to finally kind of come into his own as a fighter, and he just hasn't. Doo-Ho Choi coming off of his debut knockout win over Juan Puig, and it was a pretty good knockout. Just got him out of there. Puig seems to be a very low level fighter, but Choi got the job done impressively. Sam Sicilia, I can't take him to win this fight. He's just never has done well against guys with power. Ever since Tough, he's just been a guy who wants to brawl and throw big, wild haymakers, winging hooks and stuff like that, but he's not accurate at all. Not even, doesn't have the accuracy of a typical brawler, does not land enough shots. And, I thought the knockout against a couple fights ago against Corsani was nice, but didn't seem to let his hands go in the same way against Meza in his last fight. Is slowly starting to use his wrestling more, but he is not good in the transitions. Does not mix up striking and wrestling well. He's either doing one or the other, and as a wrestler, he's not that great. Guys like in the Aaron Phillips fight was not able to just dominate with his wrestling. Phillips was able to reverse him at times and get on top. And with the power thing, this guy was stopped by Honey Jason. He was getting outstruck by Blanco, and I think there was somebody else. I got to go with Doo-Ho Choi. This guy seemed to be an accurate, powerful striker, and Sicilia just cannot strike at range with anyone, so I think Choi is going to knock him out. Also, the Kakuno fight, I think Sicilia got hurt on the feet there, so going with Choi for the knockout. Next up, at welterweight, Hyun-Gyu Lim versus Dominique Steele. I have to go with Lim here just because the only thing I've seen from Steele was his debut loss to Zach Cummings, where he got totally trucked, got destroyed, ran over easily. And Hyun-Gyu Lim, this guy's huge for the weight class, big and strong, and an athletic specimen. But he finished his guys really violently and brutally, but he is a can crusher. I mean, we have to be honest. The guys he's finished, Takanori Sato and Pascal Kraus and Marcelo Guamares, just the absolute lowest guys in the UFC. And when he fights the better competition, Saffiedine and Magny, Saffiedine, he hung in there for 5 rounds, but really got picked apart, and then Magny stopped him. So not too high on him to be a contender, but I do think he should get the win here over Steele and get the finish. So I like Hyun-Gyu Lim. All right, on to the main card. which is on Fight Pass, by the way, 4-fight main card at welterweight. Yoshihiro Akiyama versus Alberto Mina. I'm actually excited to see Akiyama get back at it. Even though he fought Amir Sadallah last time out and got a nice win, used more wrestling and grappling than we had ever really seen from him, and was pretty dominant with it. That fight was a while ago. That was over a year ago at this point. So nice to see him get back in there again after such a long layoff. But Alberto Mina, his fight against... I have to look this up. I'm sorry. I think it was another Asian fighter that he fought. 1 second here. He was able to get the knockout. They were exchanging back and forth on the feet. They were brawling, and Alberto Mina was able to connect first, get the better of him, and he put him out. Sorry, guys. But I am taking Akiyama in this fight. That win over the low-level guy he fought isn't enough for me to take him over a veteran like Akiyama. And again, Akiyama, his wrestling seemed more improved and had dominant grappling. Looked really physically strong against Sadallah. I like that performance from him. Not terribly meaningful, but looked good for a guy coming off of a really long layoff. Shinsho Anzai was the guy that Alberto Mina finished. I think that was another low-level guy. So, I don't know if his win was terribly meaningful either. So I'm going with Akiyama here. I think he gets the win with his newfound grappling and wrestling ability. All right, next up at welterweight, Dong Hyun Kim versus Jorge Masvidal. This is a relevant matchup, and it's a really good one. I think it's really close. Either guy could win here. I think Kim will have the grappling advantage. That's always been his big weapon. He has great back control, really smothering grappling. He just ties guys up on the ground, and they can't escape. Did that to not great competition, guys like Bahadur Zada, guys like that in recent years, but I don't know if he'll have that same kind of advantage over Masvidal, and he hasn't really been going to his grappling lately. Much more content to strike, and that really hurt him against Woodley. He got the spinning back fist knockout over John Hathaway, but against Woodley, he got knocked out in the middle of attempting spinning back fist. So, I don't think if he starts to strike like that here very wildly with Masvidal, I think Masvidal is a very accurate striker. I think he can put Kim out, but I like Kim's grappling edge here. Against Bergman last time out, he returned to that a little bit, but every time it was on the feet, Bergman looked like he was about to knock out Kim. He's very uncomfortable when guys put the pressure on him. Masvidal's very well-rounded, and he's a very accurate striker, puts together really good combinations, goes to the body. He's a good grappler as well. We saw him out-wrestle Darren Cruikshank, and he even dropped James Krause in their fight late and knocked out Mutanche in his last fight, Cesar Ferreira. But I think that was more of Ferreira having a really weak chin. Masvidal taking advantage of that, because in the Iaquinta fight, he didn't throw the same way, and I don't think he's going to throw his hands like that against Kim here. Masvidal has submissions as well, and he's a strong grappler, one of the most well-rounded guys in the game. Kind of hard for me to take Kim like I am here, but I just think I think Kim's going to be bigger, and I like that ground game that Kim has. I think he's kind of refocused. We saw the submission offense from him last time out over Berkman, and we hadn't seen that in a long time. And Masvidal, like against Iaquinta, sometimes he just sits back and doesn't do much. So I'm going with Kim. I like him to get it done with the grappling, but sometimes he gets very, very uncomfortable on the feet. and I think Masvidal has a chance of putting him out. So very close, but I'm going with Kim. All right, next up at heavyweight, Mirko Krokop versus Anthony Hamilton. I really have no interest in this. I mean, I didn't care about the Krokop Gonzaga fight. I will say that was completely wrong. I said Gonzaga was going to totally destroy Krokop, and there was no chance of Krokop winning that fight. And he proved to me that he still can compete with at least mid-level guys at heavyweight. But if Gonzaga, the decorated jiu-jitsu guy with all the UFC experience, if he couldn't, hold down, if he can get the win over Krokop, even when he got him in mount and he can submit him, I don't see how Hamilton's going to do that. I mean, Hamilton's younger, he's bigger, might be more physical, and might just lay on people. He might be content to just lay on Krokop if he gets it there. But if Gonzaga couldn't get the job done, I don't see how Hamilton can. Hamilton's pretty bad. I mean, got run over by Duffy. Got the win over Omielanchik, but was still almost got knocked out in that fight, and then got submitted by Olenek very easily, and had the win over Ruin Potts, where even though he finished him, it was just like one of the most disappointing finishes to watch, because the guy just looked terrible in doing it. I mean, body shots from mount, that you don't get finished with body shots from mount unless you're like one of the worst fighters ever. So I give Hamilton a very small chance of being able to press Krokop up against the fence and dragging him down and just smothering him for a decision. But Krokop with those elbows last time out, I think he can beat up Hamilton with the dirty boxing in the clinch, and he's strong himself there. So I gotta go with Krokop. I think they're just feeding Krokop a really low-level guy to get him another big win. All right, next up at welterweight, Ben Henderson versus Thiago Alves, the main event. The best matchup by far on the card, and a really good one, but I got to go with Alves here. I know no one's going to agree with that. Everyone's going to go with Henderson, but there's some real key insights here, I think. Henderson, I don't think is cut out for welterweight. I mean, he got the win over Thatch last time, but, I mean, it's like people forgot the first 3 rounds of that fight. He was totally lost on the feet. He was getting backed up, was just circling with his back to the fence, eating shots from Thatch. Thatch was just walking him down, and Henderson had no answer until he just, remembered that he could take him down. I mean, I don't think he attempted a takedown before, the end of the 3rd or the 4th round in that fight. And, once he got him down, was in total control, got the submission. But if he was struggling like that on the feet against Thatch, I just think Alves is going to have a huge advantage with the kickboxing. He's going to be way more comfortable there. Alves was looking good against Condit with the leg kicks. Did eventually get finished, and he's slowing down too. But against Meehan, where he was eating a ton of shots, looked like he was going to get wiped out. He came back with one body kick that finished me, and so he still has that fight-ending power. Still has good kickboxing. He's a strong, dangerous fighter. Alves, if Henderson is able to get the win, I think it will come by the wrestling definitely. And Alves has never been really a wrestler and has mental lapses sometimes, like when we went for the takedown against Campman. If he tries to beat Henderson at his own game, I think he could get his back taken, could get submitted on the ground. I don't like him to go, grapple with Henderson, but on the feet, Henderson's never really been a dominant striker. Even in the fight, one of his last fights at lightweight against Rustam Khabilov, it was a really good performance, and was getting stuff done on the feet, but that was back and forth. He didn't have a big advantage there. Did end up hurting Khabilov. But Henderson's never really been, just a straightforward wrestler either. Like against Khabilov, got some takedowns, but, he really goes back and forth between the wrestling and the striking. And against that, just never look for that takedown early. I think he's going to try to strike, and it's not going to go well. Dos Santos was able to really finish Henderson. I think Alves has that same kind of pressure, forward pressure and power. So I just don't like Henderson's chances on the feet here. I really don't. And I think he could get done with the wrestling, but I don't think he really fights that way. Earlier in his career, he used the wrestling a lot more, went to it early and a lot more often. The fights against Jim Miller, Bocek, but we haven't seen that from him in a while, and I don't know if he can do that against Alves. I also think he's at a size disadvantage at welterweight. Alves isn't the same size as Thatch, but we have to see how they match up. But I just think Alves on the feet, he's a much more comfortable kickboxer. It's a lot more fluid. I think he'll be a lot more comfortable on the feet than Henderson. Has definitely a more dangerous striker. And, can Henderson impose his wrestling? Maybe, but, I just don't trust him to do that here. So I'm going with Alves. We'll see how it goes, but I am going with the upset pick in Alves. All right, those are my predictions for UFC Fight Night 79, Henderson versus Alves. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, and I will be back soon with my predictions for Fight Night Van Zandt versus Calderwood. Take care, guys, and I'll see you later. Bye.